Do you know what a canary says if he's on steroids? Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. And now, a few questions that come up in life and a few of those other kinds of things that happen. I um, saw some things about words. I've always been interested in words. What's the origin of it? And for example, vegetarian. It's actually an old Indian word that means lousy hunter. And those people who use these big fancy words, they just want to sound perspicacious. But don't worry if you can't spell Armageddon, it's not the end of the world. You know, I, uh, I've been thinking a lot about productivity in America. Now, if you worked for a company that manufactured kitchen counters and you worked really, really hard, would you become counterproductive? And I had a buddy who wanted to work at a fire hydrant factory. Couldn't ever find a place to park. The candle factory in our town caught fire one night, and everybody gathered around and sang happy birthday. You also get some bits of wisdom here and there. For example, if at first you don't succeed, then don't take up skydiving. And the sooner you fall behind, the more time you'll have to catch up. Do you realize that toes are smarter than brains? They can find furniture in the dark. Here's one. A Smith & Wesson beats 4 aces. And never hit a man with glasses. Use a baseball bat instead. And if plan A fails, don't worry, there are 25 other letters in the alphabet. And don't criticize a man until you've walked a mile in his shoes. That way, you'll be a mile away from him and you'll have his shoes. One of my favorite comedians is the guy who says, you might be a redneck if. Well, let's change that and say, you might be a Mormon if. You might be a Mormon if you call 18-year-olds elders. And if 85% of your missionaries are teenagers, you might be a Mormon. If you have something called Fast Sunday, and it's anything but, you might be a Mormon. Whereas some religions argue how many angels dance on the head of a pin, if your religion argues whether breath mints violate the fast, you might be a Mormon. And especially if you think that more people should use breath mints on Fast Sunday, you might be a Mormon. If all of your serving bowls have a piece of tape on the bottom with your name on it, you might be a Mormon. If you've ever served funeral potatoes at a wedding reception, you might be a Mormon. And if your family buys a box of Cheerios and more than half of it is eaten in church and not too much at home, you might be a Mormon. If you've ever taken a tablecloth and draped it over a box of food supplies and call it your nightstand, you might be a Mormon. And if your food storage is older than your kids, you might be a Mormon. If you've ever had an argument about Coca-Cola and feel uncomfortable about having a coffee table in your home, you might be a Mormon. If laurels are not something you wear on your head, and Mayamaids is not a misspelling of mermaids, and beehives are going to have a party with deacons, and it all makes perfect sense, you might be a Mormon. If you are an aunt or an uncle before you attend kindergarten, you might be a Mormon. If your great-grandpa, 150 years ago, left work at the end of the day and could walk home in any direction, you might have Mormon ancestors. And if your friend says at the end of a conversation, well, say hello to your lovely wife for me, and you think, well, that one would be, then you might be an apostate Mormon. But if you can name the middle initials of the top 15 leaders of your religion, then you are definitely a Mormon. One more. I call it Lawrence's Law. The closer you get to the temple, the greater the probability that the guy you just honked at is also going to the temple. That's it. Good night from Sit Down Comedy from the Lawrence household. Take good care.